Hey, it's Friday the 13th, 2020, and you're watching Battleground. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm David Menzies, and I'm with my lovely co-host, Sheila Gunn-Reid, and we are, of course, filling in for Ezra Levent, who is on a very important assignment right now. And Sheila, wow, it's Friday the 13th, as you said off camera. It feels like every day these days is Friday the 13th, doesn't it?
David, what I said was every day feels like Friday the 13th with you. That's what I said. Yeah, it's a wild and crazy world out there. Before we get too far into all the things we need to talk about, because the economy is melting down, the Wuhan coronavirus is taking over the world and shutting down our governments and our economy. Let's tell everybody what we're doing here. Because the boss has left us in charge and we don't want to screw it up because this is his show. This is Ezra Levant's Battleground. We're just filling in. So this is everybody at home. This is your chance to interact directly with David and I. You get to see us sort of in our natural environment as opposed to more serious or scripted reporting or reporting out in the field. You can pitch in a couple bucks into what we call a super chat. And that helps us pay the bills because we don't get any money. We're not like the CBC and we wouldn't take it anyways. But what that does is keep the lights on for David and I. And it'll highlight your comment depending on how much you do pitch in via Super Chat for a fixed period of time. And David and I will read or respond to whatever your Super Chat was. And we appreciate every little bit that we receive from our generous viewers at home.
Indeed we do. And folks, please feel free to contribute and you get to the head of the line in terms of us reading your comment. Now, Sheila, there is so many angles when it comes to the coronavirus. I literally don't know where to begin, but let's talk about where the rubber hits the road when people are preparing. I know you're a preparation expert yourself. What is your take on some of the stuff that is flying off the shelf that doesn't seem to make any rational sense to me, Sheila?
The toilet paper. The toilet paper apocalypse. I don't understand it. Humanity has checked its manners at the door. Have you seen some of these videos where people are just like storming the Costco, stepping over grandmas to get toilet paper that they don't need? I don't know who told them that the Wuhan virus causes diarrhea, but from what I can tell, it doesn't. And if it did, why are you not buying anti-diarrheal medication, which you should probably have in your little prepper kit anyway, if you're concerned about the end of the world and you're preparing for the end of the world? If you go into a grocery store, you'll see all the Clorox wipes bought, or whatever the house brand is. We're not sponsored by Clorox, but like whatever the brand of disinfecting wipes, that's been all bought up. But you'll see jugs of bleach sitting there, which is the cheaper, easier, and probably more effective alternative if you just throw a capful into a spray bottle and just spray down your surfaces. People aren't thinking clearly.
You know, Sheila, you're bang on. The toilet paper doesn't make sense. I have a theory, and I think it is a completely psychological response to an impending crisis. And it's the idea that toilet paper, I think for a lot of people, is a comforting thing. It is something that separates us from the animals. You know, any animal anywhere in the world is just, doing their business on the forest or jungle floor. But with us, this is one of the things that makes us human beings. We tend to clean up, and I think it's a symbol of society, and I think that's what's driving the rush. I also want to say this. it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the majority of people stocking up on the toilet paper and the majority of people getting into fights, like that one in Australia, they are women. I think there's something about women and toilet paper. I know for a fact that women use way more toilet, but listen, when I hear Lady Menzoid in the stall, that toilet roll going, it sounds like a Dodge Challenger Hemi engine warming up. I can't believe it, right? And maybe you can educate me as to why there's this gender disparity when it comes to toilet paper.
First off, that poor wife of yours. You would say something like that in front of all these people. Every day you're still married to her is a day that you were living on borrowed time. However, I think it is far less complicated than that. I don't even think there's this isn't like an evolutionary cue. I don't think this is a societal, people trying to hang on to that little shred of humanity that separates us from the great apes. I think that somewhere along the line, somebody at Health Canada said in a press conference, stock up on supplies like toilet paper. And instead of thinking beyond that and saying, okay, so like toilet paper, so maybe bleach, maybe some canned food, maybe some dry pasta, which is still on the shelves, pasta sauce, peanut butter. I'm the last person to advocate for plant proteins, but they store really well. No, but people aren't doing that. They're literally going out and just getting toilet paper. It's crazy. And I think it's far less complicated than what you're chalking it up to be. I think somebody just said, stock up on supplies like toilet paper, and that's all people heard.
Well, that's a good point, Sheila, and I guess it's only a matter of time before everyone starts stocking up on Jim Baker food buckets, which I used to mock, but maybe Jim Baker was ahead of the curve. But, you brought up Health Canada, and that, of course, veers us into more serious territory, and that is the government's handling of this crisis. What is your take, Sheila? For me, once you see entire sports leagues like NBA, NHL, MLS soccer, Major League Baseball delaying their season, but you see them voluntarily shutting down. You see amusement parks shutting down. And yet we have a situation that unlike the US that announced that European travel ban, we are still having planes come in to our major airports. And as I found on 2 occasions, going out to see flights coming in from China back in January, and earlier this month, Iranians on flights from Europe coming into Canada, there is no added screening. And this is coming from the passengers themselves whom I interviewed. And it's even amazing at Pearson, Sheila, and I thought if anywhere should have these temporary Purell hand sanitizing stations, it would be a major world international airport like Pearson International in Toronto, and there was none to be seen. So I think this is a major fumble, a major drop into the ball here on that front, Sheila.
You know what? I think we have some video that we can show of when you actually went to the airport and discovered that there were no screenings of passengers from Iran, where their entire country's in full-blown meltdown. People in their government are dying. So the people in Iran that have access to the best healthcare, they're dying. Mr. Producer, I know that you can't talk to me, but maybe you can talk to David if you don't have that. But if you do, can you roll it?
You are coming from Tehran right now, am I correct? And you were in Tehran for 3 weeks, you told me. And you just came to Toronto airport, they just checked you with the machine or whatever that they checked you out. And they have not asked you that.
Qatar, they check us.
Okay, you came to Doha, Qatar.
Yeah.
You came to Doha from Tehran, and from Tehran you came to England.
In Tehran, they check us.
Okay.
In Qatar, Doha, they check us.
Okay.
And here, no check.
Based on the Toronto healthcare, I just checked the website. We're at level 2, China is level 3, and Italy is level 2 also. Yeah, So we're level 2. I talked to 311 right now, health public, and then they say we're okay as long as they have a monitoring here in Toronto.
In Iran monitoring?
No, did they monitor you in person?
No.
No. So 311 said they should have monitoring here. But anyway, we voluntarily book a visit to Sunnybrook. So we're waiting. They're waiting for us to go in and check. And then I brought them new clothes, so then these clothes might be contaminated. And we don't want this clothes to go to the house.
I see.
So new clothes, quarantine for 2 weeks. I'm going to be quarantined for 2 weeks because I'm in contact.
Oh, really? Okay then. Okay.
My work and then my friends, anyone.
Were there many Iranians on this flight, sir? Do you know?
Well, we don't know what they're thinking about, so we don't know about politics.
Maybe 10, 5 or 10.
Are they all going to Sunnybrook to quarantine themselves?
I don't know. We don't know.
So the two of you are going to be at Sunnybrook for the next 2 weeks?
No, not Sunnybrook. They're not going to quarantine us. House quarantine.
In the house, I see.
We don't have symptoms, and it's voluntarily.
So you're self-quarantining, right?
Because I'm going to contact him, so I'm going to do it myself. Yeah, it's voluntarily.
Well, I wish.
Respect to my co-workers and my friends and in the committee, you know?
Well, I wish you good luck, sir. I hope you're okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank. Yeah, you know what, Sheila? I hope the honor system's going to work. I hope everyone's telling the truth. But you know what? I already have evidence that this is not the case. I'm right now chasing down a story. I'm not going to give the individual's name until I get a chance to get him on camera. But it is someone, an Iranian Canadian who came back from Iran to Canada. And he even admits on Twitter that he prematurely ended his self-quarantine on day 9. Hopefully he's telling the truth. I got to confirm the dates. But regardless, that's a solid 5 days before the 2-week period. And what he did, Sheila, is last weekend went to the Ontario Liberal Party convention in which they chose their new leader, thereby potentially exposing thousands of people if he indeed has COVID-19. So, clearly this is an example. And like I said, this individual on Twitter has even admitted to breaking his quarantine. It shows that maybe the vast majority of people are good-hearted and they want to do the right thing, but that's no guarantee everyone's going to do it.
No, I think some people are just selfish. They think it isn't going to happen to them, which there's a very fancy sort of powerful lady in our country who I think had that same sort of attitude, but we'll get to her in a little bit. We got some super chats to get through. We've got one from Theo. Oh, Theo, there's so many vowels in your last name, and I'm really sorry, but I'm not even going to attempt to butcher it. SEK25. I'm sorry, I don't even know that currency. There's vowels and currencies I don't know happening, Theo. But thank you very much for your generosity. One from Denis Payment, $5 says, keep it up. And one from Proud Boys Calgary. Parliament is shut down now. And Trudeau in self-quarantine with his cameraman. Shameless plug, proudboyscanada.com. Yeah, that's Parliament is now shut down for 5 weeks, which is great. I mean, the less frequently that politicians are working, the less damage they're doing to the country. I don't mind this at all. If they could just all go home and stay for longer, that would be really great too. Trudeau's in self-quarantine because his wife is sick, and I'm trying to stay on track, so we'll get to that in a second. But his cameraman is still taking glamour shots of him. So is like if he's contagious, if he has the possibility of being contagious, why is his cameraman with him? Like his cameraman, I don't know about Adam Scotty, but does he have a family? He certainly has people who care about him that he doesn't want to expose to this. So now was he quarantined too because Trudeau had to have pictures taken of himself? I mean, it's just a whole affair with these Trudeaus is so selfish. But
you know
we
what,
also
Sheila?
have...
Hasn't Trudeau been in a form of self-quarantine for about a year from Sophie? And I mean, I'm not joking here, because when you see the photos they run of them together, it's always the the beardless Trudeau. These are like clearly file photos. So, and listen, I'm not wishing anyone any kind of medical harm. I hope everything goes according to the plan. But it's interesting that I think, in a way, Justin might look upon this as a plus. As we know, he loves the ceremonial part of being a prime minister. He loves, going into a photobomb session at a citizenship rally or procedure in Wolfville, Nova Scotia, or showing up at some kids' breakfast club. But when it comes to the hard lifting that's part of governing a country, he doesn't seem so enthused about that. So I see this as him looking upon this as a positive. He can stay put, have 14 personal days in a row in which he does nothing. And, so what's the downside for Justin Trudeau, given his track record of how many vacation and personal days this man has taken since he became prime minister in 2015, Sheila?
I think the hardest part for Justin Trudeau over the next 14 days is the fact that he can't take selfies with other people. Like, he can't be out in the public taking selfies with other people. But, since we're talking about the Trudeaus, I think maybe we should just get to it. Sophie was tested positive for the coronavirus. It's suspected that she contracted it when she flew to the UK to participate in something that was like a week-long party where she was sort of the guest of honor at the Canadian embassy there, which I will file an access to information request to find out exactly how much that whole thing costs, because the economy is melting down and people are freaking out over coronavirus, and she flew there to be the center of attention. Now it comes to light that while she was there, she probably contracted the coronavirus there, and now she's quarantined and the prime minister is quarantined. That seems really irresponsible, but let me just first get this out of the way. I wish her and Justin Trudeau the best.
I do too.
She's a wife, she's a mother. This is probably a very scary time for her children. All politics aside, she's in my family's prayers. It's a scary time for them. And unlike the left, who seem to be advocating for conservatives to catch coronavirus and get sick and die, that's the last thing I want to see happen on the left. If only for the reason that I don't want them to spread it to other people, but also because politics aside, this is a human crisis.
But and you know what, Sheila? You've hit the nail on the head. Let us hope we can have a nonpartisan approach as we take care of this global emergency, this pandemic, because that's what it deserves. I see some examples of cooperation in Canada with, the province, the federal government, but I don't see it so much in the United States. The way Donald Trump has been attacked by the Democrats and their propaganda arm in the mainstream media party has been absolutely egregious and disgraceful. And it shows how much things have changed. I remember September 11th, 2001, there was that moment, I believe, where Republicans, Democrats, they all got together. I think they sang God Bless America. Of course, it didn't last all that long, but at least they decided they were going to confront that crisis united. And I don't see that happening south of the border. And it's so shameful to see something like a crisis that is potentially deadly being politicized.
Yeah. In the United States, it went from the rhetoric of Donald Trump isn't doing enough to Donald Trump is doing too much and he's racist within the span of one speech. The United States, unlike Canada, has had a coronavirus task force since January. Donald Trump met with the insurers, the private insurers, to make sure that there are zero cost testing kits available when the testing kits ever become available, but at least when they do become available, that people can access them regardless of their income or socioeconomic status, which is great. And now he's making the steps to secure his border from the hot zones, and places that are going to become potential hot zones like the EU, because the EU is basically borderless. So when you see what's happening in Italy,
Yes.
that ends up in the rest of Europe eventually. And if you don't take steps in North America to stop that from coming to here, well, I mean, viruses don't know borders. They really don't. So unless you secure the border and prevent the virus from walking in or flying in, what are you going to do? And so now Donald Trump, when he said, okay, we're banning travel from Europe for 30 days, not forever, but 30 days to protect, 350 million Americans. Now he's being told that he's doing too much.
Yeah.
How can you see what's happening in Italy and say that he's doing too much? I did a little research last night that should scare the daylights out of all of us. Italy has a slightly older population than North America, so that might explain just a touch why they're getting hit a little harder. But their healthcare system is in complete, utter collapse. They've had 1,000 deaths so far. I think, their numbers of the sick vary somewhere between 15 and 30,000, I thought. But the number of doctors they have per 1,000 people, they are number 8 in the world. So they're one of the best countries in the world equipped to deal with this. They have 4.2 doctors per 1,000 people. Canada, this is going to scare the daylights out of you. Canada is 2 doctors per 1,000 people. We're
And I
number
know
50.
And Italy
We're
has
number
been reaching
57.
out to retired doctors to, have them come into practice to deal with this crisis. And I also know Italy has more hospital beds than Canada does. So, yeah, what you just recited, Sheila, those are scary numbers indeed if this pandemic really gets going on our side of the pond. And, it's funny too. I mean, I've been trying to research this as well. Almost all my driving hours, I have Sirius satellite radio. That's due to the fact that local Toronto radio is so bad and so amateur hour. As I've said frequently, if some of those cats don't get off the air, I'm going to stop breathing it. So that makes me go out to Sirius satellite radio. And channel 121 is the coronavirus channel. If you can imagine, 24/7, they have doctors, medical experts, scientists, senior medical correspondents talking about the coronavirus. And the thing is, you notice a trend, and you can also see this by going to the Centers for Disease Control website, Sheila, that they don't state definites. They say, we believe, or we think we know that. It's not a for sure. It's not a certainty. This is very much a moving target. And, there's so much opportunity, I think, for misinformation to take root, because even the experts themselves aren't 100% certain about everything when it comes to this virus.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of uncertainty and people are learning as they go. I should get to this one last super chat here. And again, for those of you at home, if you want to interact directly with David and I, if you want us to react to your comment, the best way to do that is to super chat us, throw a couple bucks in the pot to keep the lights on at Rebel News, and it'll get highlighted. And if I don't see it, then Mr. Producer will send it to me in an email or a message, and I'll read it out loud. We've got one from Will Ross for $5. Thank you very much. He says, Sheila looks prepared for this. Smart lady. Can you explain your preparations? I'm interested in Sheila's take. Yeah, I think I'm pretty well prepared. I generally don't like to go to town. As a rule, anyways, it's pretty people-y out there. But I think for me, it comes from the fact that I grew up out of town, and so we didn't run to town for everything. So I grew up in the habit of buying a lot of certain things when it's on sale and then cycling through it. and having things on hand all the time. I know it's different to try to get into that habit when you're in the city. But it's just what I do. It's how I was raised. So it's just, like how I run my household. But it's basic stuff. Have water on hand, have Tylenol on hand, have cough medicine on hand, anti-nauseants on hand. Because you don't want to be running out in a pandemic if someone in your house is mildly sick with the coronavirus, because you don't want to be transmitting it to everybody else. That's also a big consideration. But yeah, it's just having dry goods on hand and the things you need. Don't hoard things because, like I've seen people running out buying like 10 packages of size 4 diapers. Your kid will never grow out of those before you use them all up. I mean, it's just crazy. Don't hoard.
Well, Sheila, you
think
also
of what
forgot.
you need.
You also forgot to mention, I think you're living in a part of Canada where it's minus 29 today without the wind chill.
Yes.
I don't even think the coronavirus can survive in that environment. So maybe that's what we should all do is head north. But that's the other thing about the inexplicable purchasing habits of people. We talked about the toilet paper. You talked about all those size 4 diapers that'll probably be obsolete as the child grows. But one of the most staggering things I came across, and I thought it was a joke, but it's not, is that sales of Corona beer have actually declined since this took. I mean, can you imagine who in their right mind, Sheila, in a critical mass, thinks, oh, Corona beer, coronavirus, must be the same thing. I'm not going to get infected by having that made in Mexico beer. I mean, I'm not a Corona fan. Thank goodness this virus isn't called Molson Stock Ale virus. Then maybe I'd have some delicacy choosing my beverage. But like when you see this kind of thing, Sheila, I just find it staggering.
Well, it's the same kind of people who aren't eating in their local Chinese restaurant because they're scared of a virus that began in China. Yeah. It's got nothing to do with your local Chinese restaurateur. And, their restaurant is no more infectious than your local Burger King. But people are just, this entire thing is making people not think clearly at all. Or maybe people have never thought clearly. Maybe it's just revealing how stupid some people are around us and how infectious the stupidity is. Maybe that's it.
Oh, 100%. I mean, back in January, I did an assignment for Rebel News, Sheila, where I went out to Markham, Ontario, where there was, and my heart went out to this individual. It's a restaurant called Wuhan Noodle. And his sales just went through the floor because, again, you see the word Wuhan. That doesn't mean he's sourcing his foodstuffs from Wuhan. It's all locally sourced. And I went there. I have to, and I'm going to give this guy a plug. If you are in Markham, folks, try Wuhan Noodle. Those were the best noodles I've ever had in my life. And there is a good news story to this. It seemed when we were there, there was a backlash to the backlash, and that was the fact that people who had never visited this restaurant heard about their plight and went out to support him. So I hope he's doing well because he deserves it, given the excellent quality of food and the value for money. And again, Sheila, just based on the name of a restaurant, you're going to put a hardworking guy and his staff out of business. That is just. It's hard to believe that otherwise intelligent people would think like that.
We have one more super chat from somebody named Russian Bot, gives us £2. Says Rebel News, thank you. Well, no, Russian Bot, thank you. We've got another $5 Canadian from App Venzel, I think is how I say that. And no super chat, but a very gracious donation. Thank you so much. David, staying on the topic of the coronavirus, because it seems to be, I checked Twitter today, and five of the top 10 trending items are related to coronavirus. So people obviously want to talk about this. I think we have a clip. Again, I cannot confirm or deny that because I cannot communicate with the Toronto studio, but we have a clip of what Minister Freeland, who I believe is like on our response team for this. We have a team that responds to things by not doing anything. But anyway, she was on one of the national news broadcasts making claims about what we're doing to prevent the spread of coronavirus in our country from outside our borders.
When it comes to what Canada is doing with people traveling into our country, we are constantly reviewing what is happening at Canada's border. We already have enhanced screening in place for people arriving from countries where there is an outbreak, a bigger outbreak. Coronavirus is now all over the world in more than 80 countries. But in countries where there has been a larger outbreak, we already have enhanced screening in place for travelers from those countries.
Oh, really? Well, we just showed a clip earlier on, Sheila, that the number 2 hotspot in the world after China is Iran, and there were Iranians and Iranian Canadians coming into Pearson, and none of them saw any of these enhanced screen. Is this like so new, as in like 24 hours ago, or is she just saying stuff?
She's just saying stuff. There was a tweet it was a City News reporter. Maybe Justin can dig it up as I'm talking, but there was a tweet from a City News reporter. I used it in a story yesterday, I think. She was at the airport when the last flight from Rome came in. So where their healthcare system is in complete meltdown, where they are triaging people in tents and denying care to the elderly because they don't have the resources. The last flight from Rome, they just strolled off the plane and received pamphlet about what to do if they experienced symptoms of the coronavirus. They're not even doing the stuff that we did, like we as a nation did when there was a SARS outbreak. They were using temperature guns at the airport and just picking off people as they came off the planes to identify those people with temperatures. They're not even doing that anymore. They're getting a pamphlet and saying, okay, well, good luck from these hotbeds. It's crazy.
So Sheila, the obvious question is, why aren't they doing anything? Is it a cost issue? Is it a cultural sensitivity issue? Why aren't they doing this? Because we're told over and over and over again, the one prime directive of any organization, any government agency, any government itself is public safety. This is clearly a public safety issue. So why aren't they why aren't they living up to ensuring the public safety?
David, it is literally the only government to do. Everything else they probably shouldn't be doing, but they're not. But when you look at it, there could be this like underlying cultural sensitivity because we can't say that this is a Chinese virus. It sure as hell is. That's where it came from.
Yes,
we can't call it the Wuhan coronavirus because that's our moral and intellectual superiors are telling us it's racist to say this came from Wuhan. So is it racist to be screening people coming from hotbeds at the airport? You know what? Maybe that's why this is happening. It's really quite inexplicable. Actually, you had a video where Freeland is saying we're enhanced screening people coming from these hot zones. Yet you were at the airport with travelers from China where it all began, and you saw none of the things that Freeland is talking about.
Hi, are you just arriving from China? Yeah. Just wondering, were you asked any special screening questions by security?
Uh-huh.
When you were coming through customs, did they ask you if you had any coughing symptoms, fever, anything like that?
No, actually, just asking how long have you been in China, which city? But through the machine, I'm asked about, are you came to the Wuhan before? Yeah.
And that was it then?
Yeah, just, yeah.
Thank you, sir. When you went through customs, was there any kind of special screening? Did they ask you questions about fever or coughing?
No, actually they don't. They just ask where you come from and that's it.
And even though you came from China, they didn't do any kind of additional screening whatsoever? They just waved you through?
Yeah, I mean, they have a question on the machine, ask you, have you been to that city, have a fever? And then that's all.
That's all. Okay. And so you didn't notice any kind of special screening out of the ordinary then?
No,
Okay. And where in China have you arrived from, sir?
I arrived from Shanghai.
I noticed you've got gloves and a face mask on. Have you noticed many people getting off flights from China that have had coughing fits or are feverish?
I'm not supposed to be on the TV. Can you not? We're not supposed to be on the TV.
Oh, I'm sorry, because we've been told by the authorities there's nothing to worry about, and it seems that so many people that work here are wearing gloves and face masks.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not supposed to be on the TV. Okay. And can you please not put it on the TV? Because our company told us we're not supposed to talk to any
Which company is that?
AAS.
AAF?
Yeah.
What is that a retail company here, or?
Like we do wheelchair services.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Why would they tell you not to talk on TV?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you just arriving from China?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm just wondering, did you go through any kind of special screening?
No, it seems not.
They didn't ask you if you have any coughing symptoms, fever, anything like that?
Not yet. So I think they just asked if I am from Wuhan or something like that.
Where the outbreak is?
Oh, yeah.
Do you find that interesting, that they weren't asking you these questions given the coronavirus that is spreading around the world right now?
I think they have some sign on the screen, but they didn't ask any questions about that.
Hi, guys. How you doing? Are you just arriving from China, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. When you were going through screening, did they ask you any special questions like, do you have a fever? Are you coughing?
Oh, just when you fill the form, they just a couple of questions, just answer. That's it.
Oh, I see. And on the form, there's a question about if you're feeling sick.
All things. Okay. You're sick or not? Yeah.
And there was no additional screening by the border agents.
No.
Okay. No. Interesting. And are you well? You don't have a fever? You're not coughing?
Pretty well.
Hi, ma'am. How you doing? I can't help but notice you've got gloves and a mask on.
Just to be safer.
Oh, okay. Have you noticed anybody, especially from China, coughing, displaying fever symptoms?
None. So far, none. Yeah.
Okay. Do you know, if we've asked a lot of people getting off flights from China, and they say they're not really going through any kind of special screening, going through customs. Do you find that surprising?
Well, from the gate, everyone is taking precautions, and I believe there's one that is watching if they are showing a sign of or symptoms.
Oh, so there's somebody watching visually?
From the gate, yeah, from the gate.
How could you tell if somebody has a fever just by visually looking at them?
Well, I haven't been at the gate, but usually they have this meter on their forehead,
Oh, so they are doing something like that?
They're doing something then, just making precautions,
We're nothing to say? Okay. Are you asking arrivals from China if they have a fever or coughing spell, sir?
Answer any questions.
You want to answer any questions? Isn't this the most important story in the world right now? Yeah, it's great, Sheila? How our officials adopt the Sergeant Schultz "I saw nothing, I know nothing" routine, and they seem more concerned about negative publicity getting out as opposed to, a negative virus getting out and infecting others. Geez, I don't feel a whole lot safer after listening to those responses. Do you, Sheila?
The test at the border is, are you from Wuhan? Oh, no, okay. You're fine.
Have
Come
a
in.
nice day.
Yeah, enjoy your stay in Canada. Welcome home. When I see that, I think it's only by the grace of God that things are not so much worse.
Yeah.
And speaking of your, the security officials at the airport there, I don't understand how those couple of security officials at the airport are not more concerned for their own safety. If I had to work at an airport, I would be beating the drum about this, that, we need to be better at our border. And even their own union, I talked about this in a video yesterday. The national president of the Customs and Immigration Union told the Toronto Star that his members have an immediate concern that they need more support from Health Canada at the country's major airports, including Toronto Pearson Airport. The union head said there are currently no Health Canada officials at major land crossings. So none. Just absolutely nothing. There's not a single health official at an airport, at any of the major border crossings, any of them, any ports of entry. We're on our
Sheila,
own.
let's talk about the irregular border crossings. Our
Yes, please.
wonderful colleague Kian Bexley paid a visit to Roxham Road, and you would think, you know, and I know the left is going to scream xenophobia and bigotry and every other phobia and ism there is, but I'm sorry, when people are walking across an illegal, which is what it is, not irregular, it's an illegal border crossing, and they're getting into Canada, you would think the first step in terms of securing our health as a nation would be putting up some kind of temporary fence to end this practice, at least temporarily. But no. This is a sacred cow, isn't it, Sheila? Taking in people, which for the most part, to me, seem to be economic migrants. They're not fleeing from persecution. I mean, they're coming from the United States, for goodness sakes. But it's still business as usual. They're still coming over, and the RCMP are playing out their new role as the Royal Canadian baggage porters. This is a disgrace, and I think we have a clip of, they did get down hard on somebody at Roxham Road, and that is, of course, I think it was our aforementioned colleague, Kian Bexley, because he made a parking violation. Ooh! Do we have that, Mr. Producer? Let's.
I'm on Roxham Road right now, and I'm uploading this. I'm going live because I don't know if the RCMP are going to confiscate my phone. I'm here at Roxham Road documenting what's going on as the RCMP allow illegal immigrants to flow into this country while there's a pandemic happening. I've watched it happen. They don't screen them for anything. There's no biological screens at all. There's no medical screen at all. And as I left the facility on Roxham Road, 2 vehicles came up from behind me and pulled me over. They took my ID and my vehicle registration. It's a rental. Sorry. They took my ID and they asked me what I was doing here. They asked me why I was here from Alberta. They were more concerned about me being from Alberta than they are about the illegal immigrants who I just watched cross the New York-Quebec border. They were from the Congo. They were from all over the place. One of them was from Somalia, it looked like. Absolutely no screening at all, and I'm coming here as a reporter to figure out what's going on here. And as I leave, I think it's the Quebec Provincial Police that have pulled me over here. There was 3 cruisers here at one point, now there's 2. There was 6 officers in total, and they still have my ID. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to stay live as I'm here. They turned off the lights, that was nice of them. Sorry, I'm a little bit shook right now, as the kids say. I don't know what to say. I got some pretty good footage. They actually opened the garage door when they thought that I had left. Because I sort of sat in my car for a while and it was hidden behind a corner. Oh, here, a car's leaving now. They still have my ID. They flashed a light in my eye as they drove. Okay, so now there's 1 cruiser left. Lights off. See if I can show that to you guys. All right. I'm chatting with Ezra right now. He's on a plane. And he says not to get out of the car. That's good advice. I would agree with that. But I don't know how long I wait here for. I've been here for about 20 minutes at this point. And the only thing that they've said to me is they've asked me a bunch of questions about why I'm here. How dare you be a reporter in this country? And something about not being allowed to have a vehicle on Roxham Road.
Mr. Bix?
Yes.
Here's a ticket for your parking.
Do you have evidence that I was parking?
Huh?
Do you have evidence that I was parked illegally?
Yes,
or are you just saying that?
You have it.
So here's the ticket. You have 30 days to pay it.
Well, I'm not
Contest.
gonna be paying it. I'm gonna take it to court. So I'll see you there,
Yes.
hopefully.
In back, you have 30 days to contest or pay it.
Okay.
Everything is right on the ticket.
Do you know? Oh, you know what's something I was meaning to say? Right behind us is a border crossing. It's New York actually, and a bunch of illegal immigrants come in right behind us.
Yes.
They illegally cross the border and then they come into this country. So instead of pulling over reporters, you might consider doing that, arresting the
That's
illegal
the
immigrants.
RCMP job.
Do you think they're doing a good job?
Yes, pretty good
You
job.
think they're doing a great
yes,
job?
a good job.
So
Where's
they
your
just.
document? You can't park on this road.
Do you have evidence that I was parking on this road,
Yes,
or
the
did
officer
you?
of the RCMP.
Sorry,
The officer of the RCMP have the evidence.
they have the evidence.
Yes, you will.
And
be in
you've seen
court.
it?
You will be in court if you contest the tickets.
I most certainly
haven't
will be
seen
in
it.
court.
You
haven't seen it, but you're giving me a ticket.
Yes.
You have no evidence whatsoever,
Yes, because
and you're
he's
trusting
seen
the
it.
people that are bag checking illegal immigrants.
So you can go.
Yeah, I
You
certainly
have
will.
30 days to pay it or contest.
You're pathetic.
I love that. Sheila, before we get into this, I want to tell our viewers later today, Kian's full report of his Roxham Road follies will be posted. It is must-see footage for sure. But I love that, Sheila, the fact that, where are you from, sir? Somalia, okay. Where are you from, sir? Congo, all right, go on to. Where are you from? Alberta? What kind of exotic threat to Quebec is this, right? We're going to give you the works. We're going to give you the third degree, kid. Alberta, you're not supposed to be in these here parts, right?
Yeah, they were treating Kian like an invasive species, like he was some sort of Asian carp or something. It's sometimes you see cops that are just having to do their job and it's kind of stupid and they have to do stupid things, but they're doing it because it's their job. But that cop was fully invested in the fact that Kian had no business there, and that parking was a worse violation, according to the RCMP, who collected evidence of Kian's crime and then handed it over to the local authorities, than the busload of illegal migrants that they carted out of there. And really what they were doing was detaining Kian for some sort of BS traffic violation so that they could get that bus of illegal migrants out of there so that Kian couldn't see what kind of accommodations or future screening they were subject to, or rather lack thereof.
You're right, Sheila. That was the unspoken strategy, because God forbid we have a journalist in Canada ask, insensitive questions to criminals. And that's what they are. I'm sorry, when you illegally cross a border, you can come up with newfangled words like irregulars and migrants and refugees. But until any of that's proven, the fact is when you cross that border the way they do, you are committing a criminal act, and that makes you a criminal. And we are more concerned, when I say we, I mean the royal we in terms of the federal government, of criminals that might be gaming the system being asked an insensitive question or two than actually protecting the border and protecting public safety. It's an absolute disgrace. And I just love that, Quebec provincial police officer, when Kian says to him, kind of like, psst, did you know there are hundreds of illegal people crossing here? And the police officer goes into Chico Rodriguez mode from Chico and the Man. He's not my job. That's the RCMP's role.
The law's not my job, man. Like, it's
unbelievable.
That video with Ian is like everything that is wrong with the border.
Yep.
People strolling across the border, possibly have infectious diseases, maybe worse. They're already criminals illegally in the United States, and we've got a school bus waiting for them, and Kian parks illegally, and 2 law enforcement services detain him and come down hard on him. It's absolutely perfect. Plus, there's the whole anti-Alberta sentiment, sort of weaseling in there.
Now, just one con-picking moment here, Sheila. You're saying a school bus picked them up, not a Greyhound coach? What an outrage! They deserve the finest transport our nation can offer, don't you think?
Yes. It's just everything about that video is like chef's kiss. It's perfection. It's everything we say is wrong at the border in one tidy little, I think it's about 10-minute package on YouTube. It is great.
And Sheila, by the way, I should add that this is a moment of deja vu for me, because earlier this month, when I went out to rail lines blocked by Antifa, not natives, there wasn't a single native out there near Hamilton, and it was costing millions of dollars per day for them being out there doing that. They were under investigation, but when I went to interview them, of course, they couldn't articulate their points. What else is new? The rail police said they were going to charge me with trespassing unless I left immediately. And I pointed out, what about those 24 Lugans sitting on the railroad tracks having a bonfire? And they said they're under investigation. And well, then why aren't I under investigation? Oh, well, you were investigated and the investigation's now over and you're now threatened with arrest. I don't know if Mr. Producer has a clip of that interaction, but oh, not offhand, but you'll have you can go to the website, folks, and check it out. So, in other words, people that were there almost 24 hours before me are still under investigation, and a journalist practicing journalism was investigated within, I don't know, 6 or 7 minutes, and the investigation concluded, and I had to leave or say hi to the Crowbar Motel. Sheila, is the world upside down right now? Like, what in blue blazes is going on?
Well, and it's pretty clear that the environmental movement is not sending us their best. There were, I think it was 2 sex offenders recently arrested at, I think it was a Quebec blockade. Forgive me, I'm losing track of my Eastern Canada blockades because you guys need to nut up and bust them up like we did here in Alberta. But yeah, I mean, 2 sex offenders were there just, hanging out for a couple of weeks freely in amongst people, probably young women taken up by the environmental movement. They're just loitering around there. Meanwhile, they're hassling journalists. It's just crazy. I have somebody sent the rest of their super chat to me. It was from that App Vencel person for $5 and said, Sheila, can you break a UFO story? Well, I may or may not break a UFO story, but I will definitely read it. I did open the link. It's got something to do with Tom DeLonge. So that's kind of exciting. I promise. I'll at least read through it. I really will.
They're way up there.
They're way up there. They're never going to stop here and visit us because we don't deserve it. The intrepid Margaret in the office has been sending me coronavirus news as it's breaking. She says Quebec closed schools, daycares, and post-secondary education institutions today because of the coronavirus. The Queen canceled all of her engagements. We must keep her safe. We must keep her healthy. She has to live forever because the next in line is Charles. We get.
Well, now you know it's getting serious when the Queen cancels engagement, but good for Margaret. Nothing gets past our Margaret, right? She's always on top of things. It's just an amazing trained broadcast professional, if you ask me, Sheila.
She has this butterfly net that just catches all the interesting things on the internet.
It's true.
Celine Dion postpones her tour, which is shocking to me because to look at her, I thought she was already dead. Iraqi Kurdistan.
I'll never forget Celine Dion when she was weighing in on Hurricane Katrina, and she was
can't weigh in. She doesn't register on a scale. She doesn't weigh in.
There was an ex-employee of Rebel who was a ginormous Celine Dion fan, but I'll never forget, It was the most unintentionally funny interview on the Hurricane Katrina tragedy, and it was Celine Dion, and she was saying, I know there was an issue with English to French translation, but she was trying to say TV or television, and she was saying, I look into my little box and I see these people on their rooftops and there's water all around. And it was just like, you know what, Celine, maybe why don't you make a financial contribution and pay for some boats to get out and rescue them from their rooftop, right?
Yeah, I'm sure she has a private helicopter that she could have used to rescue them. More in Margaret's fabulous roundup of coronavirus news. Iraqi Kurdistan, somewhere I have recently come back from, puts Erbil and Sulaymaniyah on lockdown due to coronavirus, a 48-hour curfew declared. That does not surprise me. Now, Erbil is the major Christian community left standing in northern Iraqi Kurdistan, but it's also the region where all the UN camps are. And so if the coronavirus gets into those UN camps that are under-equipped, it could be catastrophic, and it is largely Christians and Yazidis left languishing in those camps. So I'm glad to see that the Iraqi government is doing what they can to keep them safe. The LA Archbishop, this is shocking for Lent, but not really, gives permission to stay home from Mass amid coronavirus spread. My own Archbishop, Archbishop Smith in the Edmonton Archdiocese, is actually self-quarantining right now because it sounds like he was exposed or at least not feeling well. And Scotland has its first corona death. And that is everything on the wonderful Margaret's coronavirus roundup of things that she just sent me in the meantime while she does all of her other work. What a good girl.
Thank you, Margaret. Are you allowed to call her a girl? I think, isn't she a mature woman? I mean, you know, if I were to say that, do I get into trouble, or are you allowed to call her that because you're a woman too?
I don't think Margaret gets uptight about much. Proud Boys Calgary.
Well, she's working at the right joint, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, no. If that's the thing. If she was like that, she won't last long, and she has already. So, Proud Boys Calgary gives us $2 and says the markets caught the Wu flu. They should have bought toilet paper. All right. David, what else is on our list? It's 10:55. We probably have time for just one more. Maybe you at the Women's March?
Yeah, let's talk about the...
No?
So what was that, Mr. Producer? Okay, Mr. Producer is going to need a little time to queue it up. But last Sunday, it was International Women's Day. And what I discovered, Sheila, is that International Women's Day has been co-opted by entities that have absolutely nothing to do with women. Socialists, Marxists, communists, the climate change crusaders. By the way, that was one of their themes this year, climate justice. And you know what led the parade? And I asked them about this after the parade, and they didn't even know how to respond. What led the parade, Sheila, was a beautiful Ram 1500 diesel pickup truck with their boom boxes on it, right? Not exactly a plug-in Toyota Prius, eh? You know, but
did they get some dude to drive it for them?
Yeah, maybe it was powered by the lithium crystals. I don't know. Maybe it was a conversion job. But and also what I noticed is that the people in this parade, they were all angry, and they really didn't know what they were angry about. And you know, I just it was baffling. I mean, I'm kind of used to it now, but let's let the visuals tell the story. Here you go. What's with the fingers? That's not very ladylike. Why would you do that, man? Hi, sir. What does the communist movement have to do with women's rights? Oh, he's not allowed to talk to me? Oh, you know what? You're a great emblem of a communist regime, ma'am. Now, why would you be marching in a women's parade when your ideology is responsible for tens of millions of deaths since its inception? Why is that, sir? Oh, you're not allowed to speak to me? Oh, wow. Gee, I guess women's rights have taken root here. He can't speak without getting permission from the lady.
Please don't.
What's that, ma'am?
Please don't. Please don't take photos. Please go. Please don't take photos of us. Please go.
Oh, we're in the public square, ma'am. We're allowed to do that.
No, please don't take photos of us.
Why?
Please don't.
You're in the public square and you've got placards up.
Photos of us.
Okay.
Please don't take photos of us.
Well, feel free to phone the police.
Please go.
Okay, then.
Just leave us. He's not carrying it.
Now those were the socialists, Sheila. Now earlier on, one of the persons posing for that photo op, and think about that, they have a photo op and they have placards, and this woman has a bullhorn, and she's saying, "Don't take pictures of us." But he was trying to sell me an issue of their socialist magazine. And I said, wait a minute, you mean I have to buy it? And they go, well, yeah, we only mark it up a little bit for a profit to get a return. And I went, holy moly, that kind of sounds like capitalism. It's funny when they have skin in the game, there's no handouts, no freebies then, right? But, Sheila, all I got to say to all your colleagues out west, when you wonder why Ontario or in Southern Ontario voted predominantly Liberal, look what was marching down the streets of downtown Toronto last Sunday.
Good Lord, there's so much anger there, and I think you asked me why. These are women who have wasted their fertile years on cats, careers, and abortion. So there's a lot of internalized resentment there that they're just spilling out on issues like climate change and socialism. And they're angry at you, and they're angry at happy women. I just think what a terrible way to live. And I hope our younger generation of women look at these like miserable cat hair covered, blue haired monstrosities and just say, not for me. Not for me.
And you know what Sheila was so telling is that those two women that walked past at the beginning of the parade, and I didn't even ask them a question. I was just standing there with my camera, and they were giving me the middle finger, and they were sticking their tongues out at me, and they were dropping F-bombs. And when I said, gee, that's not very ladylike, did you see the look on her face? It was like, how dare you call me a lady? I guess in this day and age of the slut walk, I should have said slut. Maybe that would have made her happy. I don't know. I can't figure it out anymore, Sheila.
We've got one more super chat, and then I think we're at the end of our day, David. The fastest hour on TV. Okay, we've got one from Basil the Pumpin' Seagull. I'm not even going to ask why that's your name. That's $5 Canadian. It's scary the level of insanity we are seeing. 20 years of commie university professors, yes, is finally culminating in what we see. Yes. Send your kids to trade school.
I couldn't have said it better, Sheila. As you can see, this is complete indoctrination. They have been taught, like on the front of socialism, Marxism, communism, that these are utopias. When you point out the real life examples, such as Cuba, Venezuela, North Korea, they just write those off as anomalies. The only people that seem to support communism are those who have never lived under the repressive totalitarianism of communism, because whenever I meet Eastern Europeans on the street who are only a generation removed from the fall of the Iron Curtain in the Soviet Union, they stare in disbelief at these useful idiots coming out of universities that are propping up an ideology that literally killed their family members. And it is a disgrace. It is total indoctrination of our education system. And maybe it'll take decades, maybe it'll take half a century, but maybe we can only hope the pendulum swings the other way and we have less of this leftist viewpoint in our schools, because they're churning out these foot soldiers, and it's depressing.
I completely agree. I've read that Generation Z, so that's the generation under millennials, they're the most conservative generation since World War II, and I believe it. I think there comes a time where young people, it's their natural inclination to have conservative libertarian tendencies but not realize it. Young people don't like being told what to think, what to wear. They're resistant to rules. Anybody who's raised a teenager knows that. And they're sort of embracing that, the things that they grind against in their household, that's what they're grinding against in society now. And hopefully they save society from itself. I have a lot of faith in them.
Indeed. Well, Sheila, I just heard Mr. Producer bark rap in my ear. I don't think he's talking about a sandwich that just got delivered to him. I think we have to end, as you called it, the fastest hour on TV. Thank you so much for joining me as a guest co-host. And thank you, folks, for tuning in. Thank you so much for those of you who contributed a little do-re-mi in your super chats. The big boss man, Ezra Levent, he'll be back in this space as per usual next week. In the meantime, have yourself a wonderful and extra safe weekend.